Welcome, Artur. Thank you very much for finding some time to address struggling students and graduates from Oxford who battle COVID and try to learn something new, explore some new horizons for their career. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Great. So we want to...
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. We want to start from learning a little bit about your career in NASA. We know that you are for 40 years working for the organization in a number of areas. We had the pleasure to host you at Oxford and learn about the Rosetta project. Please tell us what you're working on right now.
So yes, I've been at NASA for 40 years. I went to high school just like you in Poland, and I graduated from high school in Poland. And then after that, I came to the United States to go to college. But so when I graduated from college 40 years ago, with bachelor's, I always wanted to work at NASA, right? And I don't know how it is at Oxford. It's probably similar. You have a career center. You have a place where companies come, right, and interview students. Yeah. So this is the same thing. I was at University of Michigan, later at USC and UCLA. But when I was at Michigan, I signed up for 11 interviews. So I'm going to tell you about this because, you know, this is where a lot of people may be. You have maybe PhDs, but it's a similar thing. Yeah. It's, you know, we just launched the rover Perseverance, right, yesterday to Mars. But this word perseverance is key for all of you to be successful, actually.
It's not a coincidence. Okay.
From, you know, right now, the life changes. When you were in your PhD program, when you were in school, it was all about getting good grades. It's about knowledge. It's about studying and a little bit of figuring out the system, right? Now the game changes. The game is perseverance, okay? So I just want to tell you, like people say, oh, you know, he got to NASA, he lived in the United States. That's not how it was. I had 11 interviews at University of Michigan. And out of the 11 interviews, I got 10 job offers. So I was very happy about that because this was amazing, right? I had pretty good grades, you know, and I was extremely interested in engineering. And I started in physics, but then I switched to engineering because I was a poor Polish student. And, you know, to make money, it's very difficult to get a summer job in physics, much easier in engineering. So my counselor in college put me on this co-op program. Means that one semester you study, one semester you work. And I worked at Ford Motor Company and a few other places, right? So I got 10 job offers, right? And I did not get a job offer from just one institution. Which one?
NASA.
That's right. Right? So the one that I cared about, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like with dating. If you're really interested in the other person, you're nervous and you're not yourself, and
totally.
I don't like you. And if you don't care about, oh, you know, I'm not really interested, then they're really interested in you. I don't know what it is, but so what I did is I set up interviews with a lot of companies in California. It was Chevron, you know, oil companies. It was a company that builds refineries all over the world. It was a company that builds actually trucks, and then I would have the first half of the day I would have an interview at this company, and then after lunch I would take off and I would go to JPL to NASA to try to get an interview and get a job. And I did this 5 times, perseverance, 5 times. And on a 6th time, when I was about to give up, they sent me to this young supervisor. And the supervisor looked at my resume and said, oh, do you know anything about cars? And I said, yeah, I know everything about cars. And he says, oh, we just got a letter yesterday from Washington, D.C. that they want to build an electric car, and this was 30 years ago, right?
Wow.
They want to build 40 years ago. They want to build an electric cars using NASA technology, right?
Wow.
So he says, okay, when do you want to start? So that's how I got my foot into NASA, right?
But it
And
was
it's,
number of meetings and months of hard work.
yeah. So I just want to tell you that, because one of the questions you wanted to ask me, you know, how do you get an internship at NASA? How do you get an assignment at NASA? How do you get hired?
Right.
Well, it's perseverance, right?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll get to that because number of Poles won't join this organization. So most of our audience today are people working in the overlap of machine learning, computer science, math, and data technologies.
Yeah.
And we know that all of these trends, they kind of emerged from NASA. But if you could share some of your experience or some of the projects where you are involved in technologies heavily related to machine learning and data, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, so this is an interesting situation with any AI, machine learning, analytics, you know, because NASA loves to hire these people and they are in short supply. As a matter of fact, we have very hard time finding folks who have this kind of education, right? As a matter of fact, you know, like about a month ago, we found a person in Brazil who has a PhD in AI and would be interested in working at NASA, and we're helping her with her green card, right? These people are in huge demand, right? And then we have a problem keeping these people once we hire them. You know, we're losing one of the problems actually that, you know, the Perseverance now on Mars doesn't have a lot of machine learning, AI, does not have route planning, does not have image recognition. It doesn't. You know, it's all steered from the ground, pre-programmed in segments. And the reason for this is because we lose these people. You know, I just worked with somebody who was working on a two-wheeled rover. The reason we like two-wheel rovers is because they can get to a lot of places that six-wheel rovers cannot get. Like we want to, for example, have two wheels rovers, so one can stay on the top of the crater and the other one can go into the crater, right, on a cable, right? So he worked on that, and we want to see on the side of the crater strata, right? What's going on in this crater? What is the historical geology of Mars, right? So he worked on that. And he made a video about his project. Poof, Google comes, starts talking to him. And he's then, you know, and they say, well, you know, how much are you making? 100,000. Well, how about 150? You know, you're working at Google. And he says, no, this is really exciting. You know, I'm building robots for a moon and Mars. Oh, how about 200? You know, and by the time you get to 300, you know, you triple your salary. People say, well, that's a change of lifestyle, right? Now I can have my Tesla Model S, okay?
And science becomes secondary.
And then, you know, so it's very difficult to hire these people and very difficult to retain them because of Amazon, because of Google, because of Apple, especially in autonomy. I think that, you know, Apple is doing something maybe next iPhone there will be a fair amount of autonomy in it and AI, because they're just snapping. We just had a guy who was working on autonomy in landing, because we have problems because we're going to moons that are so far away. You know, you have 5 hours of light travel, right? So you got to have autonomy and autonomous vision, because otherwise, you know, we're not going to communicate with a robot and wait 4 hours for an instruction. Right. So, but anybody who works at JPL in autonomy gets these offers, so that they are preparing for something.
Understand. So it's not only about hiring them, but it's more about keeping and being in a direct competition with the big tech.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why we help these folks with green cards, with citizenship, but it's under premise that you're going to stay and work for JPL for a few years if we help you get a green card, right? Because I don't want to talk too much. I'd rather answer questions than go on my own monologues here. So if people have questions, I'll be glad to answer it.
So this is probably a great segue to question about terrestrial technologies. So we see that the commercialization of technologies from space is happening and has been happening for years. But can you give us some examples, some places like medical research or telecommunications research, where you guys directly led the exploration of technologies which are just accessible for general public?
Yeah. So this happens all the time. This happens every day, right? Because JPL's annual budget is $1 billion, but we get about $250 million back every year from licensing, from equity, from selling rights to inventions and startups that are being bought out. And so that's 25% return on your investment. That's pretty good.
Significant.
Stock market gives you normally 6 to 8, right?
Yeah.
Of course, classical case is this, right?
Yeah.
So this has 8 technologies without which iPhone would not exist, right? And 7 of them came from space, right? Initially they had a miniature hard drive that came from space, even the camera here. So the camera here was designed by Eric Fossum, who had his office 2 doors down from me. I got an assignment from the administrator to work on ultra large telescope. I was building a telescope because we were, this was the time when this thing was created. This was the time when we weren't even sure if there are extrasolar planets orbiting, right, other stars. We just started these observations, right, due to developing techniques of occultation and others. But so the administrator called me and said, okay, I was at that time working on an inflatable antenna in space, okay, and he says, okay, that's an inflatable antenna, that's a radio antenna. Can you build me an optical telescope? And because, once we discover a few of these planets, and some of them will have a promise of life, people will want to have a picture of this planet, right? So can you get me a picture? Can you calculate what kind of a telescope you would have to build to get me, at least 10 pixels by 10 pixels picture of extrasolar planet? So we did calculations and we figured that it would be an optical telescope the size of a Wembley Stadium, right? So you're not going to make it out of aluminum or glass, right? So we were working on an inflatable telescope of that size, and I got the job to work on this technology. Eric got a job to work on the miniature camera, right? So, and at that time, he was under barrage of questions. Why are we paying for this? What do we need a small camera for? We need huge cameras, right? And he was defending himself. What if you want to build a miniature rover for Mars, things like that. But he developed this camera and Apple got rights to it. And now you have, there was a breakthrough, having a camera. You remember the times when you had a phone, right? And then you will have even small cameras, right? You will have to carry 2, right? So, things like that. I think that only actually touchscreen was developed by a thing. I'm sorry?
The capacity screen, right?
Yeah, right. So that was developed commercially, not for space. So there are things like that. We have 7 technologies from space, right? It's not that they were developed or even commercialized, each one of them. It's just that Apple grabbed them and connected them and came up with this, which now brings profits greater than the budget of Poland, right?
Yeah.
So there's but there are examples like this every day, of space technology going into terrestrial side, and this is where companies get, we encourage at JPL the innovation and forming the companies. And as a matter of fact, I've been working with Poland for a few years now, and my assessment is, and this is maybe why your students are at Oxford and not at Politechnika Warszawska, right? Because Poland is excellent in inventions, but not at innovation. Do we understand the difference?
Yeah. You can clear it out for the audience.
Okay. So invention would be, I invented a tiny camera, right? Okay, so it's a tiny camera. I built it, it works. I tested it, it's TRL-6. It works, I showed it in the lab. Now what? Okay, yeah. So now you have to go to somebody or have to get an idea, okay, how are we gonna use it? We're gonna use it for a cell phone. Oh, that's innovation. Now making products with it, right? So,
and
as a matter of fact,
it requires a little bit different training on the educational level, probably.
Right, and also the problem with Poland is attitude that we're teaching young people. It starts with colleges. I don't know how it is at Oxford, maybe you'll tell me, but in a lot of colleges, the professor is God, right? And God comes into the classroom and everybody has to be quiet and God speaks. And then
it's very different. It's very different, Oxford.
And then maybe God will ask, are there any questions? And there will be no questions because everybody is afraid to show that maybe they are not close to God. Maybe they haven't read chapter 13, right? So maybe they'll make fools of themselves. And the attitude in the United States is that if the teacher gave a lecture and you don't understand it, the teacher failed. And it all starts with little things like, not addressing the professor as panie profesorze, czy mógłbym, tylko hej, Marcin.
Exactly.
Marcin, ja nie rozumiem kompletnie ten wykres, co pokazałeś. To jest w ogóle, ja nawet nie wiem, a w ogóle a co tam jest na X? Co to są za jednostki? W ogóle tego nie napisałeś, także ja tego nie rozumiem. Prawda? This is unheard of in Poland, right?
Right.
But it stops people from being go and get them. Okay, I want to understand it. I want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So we have to change attitude. Okay, I'm talking too much again, so I'll stop.
I felt the difference immediately. My very first lecture, I can recall it clearly. Professor, very accomplished professor, nominated to Nobel Award. He started from saying, by the way, just call me Steve. If you send me an email, don't call me Professor Steve, don't call me Dr. Steve, because sometimes you will be trying to ask me a very brave, innovative question, and you might think that you're making fool of yourself.
Right.
You're calling professor. So it's a very flat approach to the relation teacher, educator versus student.
So I had some, for example, super bright students come to JPL. I invited them because they were participating in a rover challenge in Utah. So I said, come on down, show your rover to JPL engineers. Maybe they have some ideas for you. And I set them up for presentations, and all the engineers and management were super impressed with their presentation. Good English, good understanding of the topic. We're trying to hire a lot of women because there are only 23% of women at JPL and NASA, and we're trying to make it 50.
Okay.
Right. So, the ladies from this Polytechnic, were really impressive. I mean, the next day, supervisors called me and say, "Hey, how do we get him hired?" But the only thing was also the other questions that I got the next day was, are they interested in cooperating with us? And I said, what do you mean? Well, they made these presentations and then they sat in the back of the room. And I said, no. So they was interpreted as lack of interest, that they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to be engaged.
Right.
They just want to go home. They've done their thing. But that's probably comes from, how they are taught that you show the respect, right? By sitting back and that's a
and
problem.
there is this invisible wall between the leaders and the students.
Right.
Great. So
so there was just recently, I participated in this contest from Gazeta Wyborcza. It was Jutro Nauczy, and they basically send a person here for mentoring, right? And so I picked this student from Politechnika Gdańska, and he came here, and I took him to JPL to some meetings, and I asked him, so what do you think is different here and in Poland? And he says, the major thing that I notice is that in your meetings, you don't know who is the boss. And everybody speaks equally, and it's very dynamic. And he says, in meetings in Poland, professor comes in and makes a speech, or immediately that this is the professor and the rest of them are students or boss and employees. So, and here, I still don't know who was the boss. Were you the boss or somebody else was the boss? I don't know. It's this interaction. It's this, that how we conduct ourselves. It's different. And that's what I want to help the Polish students with.
Right. Great. So the next question comes down to the commercialization of space. And you got to this industry 40 years ago when it wasn't that sexy at all. Right now, people on their Facebook news feeds, they watch launches of the rockets, but it wasn't the case a few years ago. It used to be a very bounded and heavily regulated organization, and the commercial space barely existed, from my understanding of it. And being in this industry for so long, you probably have a chance and perfect perspective to see how it's been evolving. So if you could give us some kind of broader context of the commercial space, how you see it, how it began, and where it's heading.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question, and it's a very important question because it's a huge opportunity for all the students that are graduating with the degrees in STEM, right? In math, aerospace engineering, information technology, computer science, and I just want to tell you that we also now hire people in other things, not only, like, for example, biology, right? Because NASA wants to find life outside of Earth, right? So we hire biologists. We just hire a person with a degree in chemistry who came to us from pharmaceutical industry, right? Because he was just tired of, developing another pill and after pill after pill that there's pushed on public, kind of sometimes unethically, and he wanted to do something exciting. We also hire people like, we really value people who have a major, let's say, in physics and minor in literature.
Oh, wow.
Because what we learned is, we say that everything that is easy has been done. Now we have to do hard things, and hard things require creativity. And what we notice is that if a person has this both hemispherical brain, literature, French history, and chemistry, these are very creative people, and they come up with solutions that we couldn't come up with before, right? So we like to hire people like that. But from the commercial aspect, this is a wonderful time to be in space. Why? Because before we were building all these spacecraft that cost $1 billion, right? Galileo, Ulysses, Cassini, Curiosity rover. These are all $1 billion machines, right? So who's going to build $1 billion machines? Well, ESA and NASA, okay? And now you have to get hired by ESA and NASA. I personally and there are big parts of both ESA and NASA. They're very bureaucratic. You wouldn't want a job there. You have to get a good job, right? Building things, doing research, exciting things at the forefront, right? But now there are a lot of companies that go into space. For example, I've been working with this company from Wrocław, Set Revolution. They were a startup maybe a few years ago. Now they are a very legitimate and aggressive company. And so they already sent a couple of satellites into orbit. I want them to build satellites for American market. So there are a lot of companies like this, small companies. There are other companies like this in Poland and in England, right? And in Great Britain and the United States. And so what do? They build small spacecraft. And these spacecraft, you can launch a spacecraft into Earth orbit for $50,000. The interplanetary space, like Marcos, flew to Mars. They were built 2 spacecraft for 18 million. And now I lead a program at JPL preparing next portfolio of missions. They'll be going to asteroids, they'll be going to comets. So, there are a lot of these small missions. And why is it exciting? Number one, you get a job in a company that builds these small spacecraft, you will actually get amazing training because they will let you build things because you're allowed to take risk. Because you're allowed to take risk in a $10 million mission or $50 million mission, they will not let you take risk. Everything is triply redundant, reviews. You'll be sitting talking to your boss every week for 3 hours. Did you do this? How did you design? Is there noise on the line? Is the lens gonna darken? What is the contamination of your instrument? That by the time we finish the design and build it, you don't even recognize your design, right? Because one little resistor breaks and your $1 billion mission dies, right?
Yeah.
So, but in a small company that builds a $10 million satellite, you're responsible for it. You better do it right, and nobody even knows, your electronics, or nobody knows your deployment of your array. So you are responsible for it. You better do it right. You better learn it. You better do the right test. So it's exciting. And there are a lot of these companies. And now, they've been mostly for Earth orbit, but now they start flying. We start flying to asteroids, comets, Mars. We're planning the whole plethora of missions going to Mars, small missions. A lot of opportunities for young people.
Okay. And can you follow up on the natural sciences, biology field? Because many Poles are in this field, and I'm sure they will be interested in learning more how NASA is involved or related to the natural sciences field.
Right. So we call it astrobiology, okay. Right? And that in this field has experts in physics, biology, microbiology. The idea is to find this organism, detect life. How do you detect life? What is life? What is life, right? What is the definition of life? You have to define life to be able to detect it, right? Maybe you have metabolism, you have some boundary, you have multiplication of the, you have growth, maybe, I don't know, maybe, so, and then somebody will always give you a counterexample, flame, okay, it has metabolism, it takes oxygen, releases carbon dioxide, it multiplies, it can spread, it does have boundary. Is it alive? No. Oh, what's wrong with your definition, right? But then you have to build these instruments. How do you discover, how do you detect life? What do you do? And then once you build them, you have to miniaturize them. So for example, right now, you ask me what I do, I'm planning the next, so this Perseverance rover is taking a little helicopter to Mars, right? This is just a technological test. There will be this tiny little helicopter flying. It's size of your laptop. But the next mission, I'm planning the next mission. What are we gonna do? Take 20 of these helicopters, and what can they do, right? They can get to the sides of craters, of hills. They can maybe dig. If you are a biologist, design me a little sampler of this of this regolith, and how do you look for life there? So microbiology, biology, right? How would you also, what we did recently, JPL build a ventilator, right? And how do you, you know, is it like super difficult ventilator build like a spacecraft? No, quite to the contrary. Now the instruments have to be simple and have to be little, right? So we built this ventilator that has like 10 times fewer moving parts, right? And so this will be a hit on the market. You're talking about commercialization, right?
Yeah.
And these different companies come to us, like for example, Ferrari came to us and they want to build the next generation of a race car, right? So we've been working with them on making 3D printing their engine, doing system engineering, combining their electrical engine with the gas engine, right? And making the car so much lighter, so it's faster. Unfortunately, we had two mechanical engineering that were going to Modena all the time and working with Ferrari engineers, and now they both got offers from Ferrari, and they decided to work for Ferrari again because they got nice money, and well, maybe living in Italy is kind of fun.
And trying the cars.
And working on cars is probably on Ferraris, at least it's, you know, maybe as much fun as working on spacecraft. But the other things is doing research, for example, working in ice labs. These worlds are cold, like Europa and Enceladus. We expect to find life in oceans, so we have to simulate. You know, biologists have to simulate these kind of environments, right? So they work in ice labs. What if you add an underground thermal vent to it? How could life evolve in these situations, right?
Okay. Well, speaking about the biological developments, there is one which changed our lives quite significantly. Speaking of COVID, and you mentioned about the ventilators, does COVID influence work at NASA at all? Does it change your daily routine or the schedule of your missions? Is it going to push the development of technologies in NASA and astrobiology, or it's not going to influence really?
Well, everything is delayed. Luckily, you know, we had an interesting situation because you know, Perseverance launched yesterday to Mars, right? And so people who were involved in Perseverance, they had to stay at work and do all the final tests but they were endangering themselves because there were about 600 people working on the project. So, you know, and how do you assemble something if you don't come in close physical contact? So that was a little tricky. The space telescope is being delayed because, you know, everything takes more time and it's a little bit dangerous, and we want to show that we respect science of how the virus spreads, right? So it's a little tricky, but also there is difference in working together. You probably noticed this, right? Like for example, on my project, I'm also working on these small missions. So we decided it's a good opportunity for young people to get training, right? Because, you know, you build a small spacecraft and then we move you to the flagship mission. And it's more fun to young people, and they get to do things that break, right? You learn the most when you break things, when you actually fail, right? So we let them fail. Mm-hmm. So we have, for example, I hired two system engineers. They are fresh out from, you know, just got their graduate degrees, and I talk to them every day, but there isn't the same personal relationship, because before, when I hire people, they come to my office every day. You know, I can sense better their personality. I can sense their fears. I can sense if they're uncomfortable with somebody in a meeting, and then I talk to them. Because, you know, at the end of the day, really, what is difficult is not technology, but it's people getting along and working as a team, right? If
That's
you're
a brilliant point.
uncomfortable, if you're not
Everyone who
happy,
everyone who is in the middle of their PhD program, they know it right away, what
right,
you're talking
right.
about.
If you don't, if you're not getting along, or you're not completely happy, or you don't have a good relationship with your PhD advisor, you know, your life is different than when you know that a person loves you, right? Right. So the same thing. I don't have that good feeling about these folks. Are they happy? Are they uncomfortable? Are they excited about the work? Are they overwhelmed? Remotely, I'm not. I'm not really sure. So that makes the work much harder. I also noticed that there's a difference, because I have meetings from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. right? All WebExes, one after another. You know, there used to be from 9 till 5, then it was 8 to 5, then it was 7 to 5, then it's 7 to 6, and you know, because these meetings build up, and then I notice that people are tired, and we want to move things along. So people lost their sense of humor. Nobody's joking about anything. It's just next thing, next thing. So it's much more robotic in that sense.
Understood.
So that's the change I'm seeing. I don't know, what change do you see?
I recently delivered a workshop bootcamp on AI, and that's the very first time when students said that it was more productive remotely than in the regular scenario. Because I was able to share my screen all the time and show them my code, and I was able to look into their code right away very quickly. So that's the only scenario where it's been better. Every other case, the communication, interpersonal part of it is very hard, being on the screen. Plus, if you work 12 hours in front of your computer, your brain and your eyes hurt a little bit.
Right, right. But that's true what you said, because you know, in some cases, like for example, for conferences, it's because, you know, more young people can attend. So so that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned about education and the way how breaking things and failing frequently is teaching you more. If you had an advice or word of thought about the way how education should be structured to bring more people to the amazing fields and careers like NASA and research, what would be your advice or your observation from your career?
So, you know, I was trying to kick off a Polish Mars mission. I don't know if you saw some press conferences. I picked some companies in Poland. We made a consortium. Set Revolution was there. Akademia Górniczo-Hutnicza, Politechnika Warszawska, i inne. But the basic was that people who make decisions, the people who hold funding purses, they think it's too hard. They don't believe in abilities of Polish engineers and scientists. You know, things like, I was hearing things like, no, nawet Niemcy nie zrobili tego, oni jeszcze nie polecieli na Marsa, to jak my to możemy zrobić? No, to pewnie za trudne, a jak się coś zepsuje, to zrobimy z siebie idiotów. Well, so you asked me, I wrote a book in Polish for teenagers, young kids, about, you know, it's kind of biographical for me, but the basic message of it is, don't be afraid to attack difficult problems, and you can do it. And this is what we're missing, this belief in yourself that Americans sometimes have too much of, but we definitely, Polish people, have too little. So I want to send that message. So that's why I wrote this book. It will come out in maybe 3 months or so. So to answer your question is, you know, if anybody is right now online, these are amazing people. Why? Because they took this half an hour from Friday, could be doing something else, you know, watching replays of the English Premier League, you know, uh, 50 best goals of Lewandowski, you know, I don't know, whatever, or read a science fiction book. And you came here thinking, oh, I'm going to listen to this guy and maybe there's some nugget there that will make me a star. And you are already a star because you did this. That means, first of all, you got to Oxford University, so you're a genius, right? Secondly, you got involved in this telecom. That means that you're looking for ways. You're an active, assertive person. So you're going to do, just by knowing from the fact that you attended this, you are a super, and you know, so you're better than everybody else, and you're going to be very successful.
Great. And I think that you have some secret that you want to spread with us about the way to be involved with NASA and with high-tech, world-class technology in Southern California, not directly working and going through the torture of citizenship and green card permits to be employed, right, directly. And my question is, what's this way to do it?
Well, so there are, first of all, can you hear me? Because there's
there was line dropping.
Connection was a little bit breaking up.
I think it's
but
yeah.
If, you know, I would hugely encourage you to get a postdoc or summer job or an internship at JPL. JPL has a lot of exciting jobs, and JPL is really geared to making it a good experience for you, right? And JPL is very interested in. I hugely would encourage folks to find a way to get to JPL, and there are a lot of exciting jobs. We'll put you on the newest, you know, mind-boggling missions. You know, 100-year trip to the next star. You know, finding life on Enceladus, digging 10 kilometers under the ice to get to the ocean to take a picture of this fish in the Saturnian system. I don't know if you can hear me because it's breaking up a little bit, but
we can now. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, but so there are following ways. Number one, there is a postdoc program at NASA headquarters. You can apply to it. For some reason, Polish people don't apply to it. French people apply to it. I mean, like, we get probably 80% of our postdocs are from France for some reason. There are some from India. I haven't encountered anybody from Poland. What's going on? So you need to apply, and I can send you a link, and maybe you can send it to the audience, right? Apply. You're from Oxford, for crying out loud, and you're doing PhD at Oxford. We'd love to see you, right? So, and then you come here, you work on an exciting project, and you learn who you are. Then there's an office here at JPL that helps people like you to get a job at NASA, right? Get you a green card. The other way is you come here on, and you work for a small company. And what they do, these small companies, is then they have you work for maybe half of a salary they would have to pay to an American citizen, but in return, you know, I'm sorry, but that's how it works. Mm-hmm. And then they advertise, after you've worked for a while, they advertise, specify, you know, this low salary that you're getting, right? And they say, okay, so you need like this, we have this job here opening because there's this Polish person here. Well, they don't say this, but it's Polish PhD. But, you know, she's been getting $50,000 a year, and she has a PhD from, and you need to have 3 years of experience in such and such area, which you've been working on, and it's $50,000, and they get no response, right? Because nobody in the United States wants to be paid that much. So they advertise for 3 months, and then they go to the INS and say, look, we advertised for 3 months. Nobody was interested. We got no bites from the United States. So can we hire this person and offer them a green card? And they say, well, if that's the case, if this is the expertise and there's such an expertise in the United States, well, sure, that's how it works. That's right. And the other ways is, if you're doing some research and you know that somebody at JPL is doing this research, find this person from JPL or NASA. It could be another NASA center. Goddard is a good place. They do a lot of research in earth science and astrophysics research. And get in touch with this person. They'll be glad to help you come to NASA, help you out, and work with them, right? And then when you work with them and ingratiate yourself, then they'll also help you. There are some other ways. There were folks here from Poland on Kościuszko Foundation. We had a couple of people here, and I talked to them, and they always like to send people to me, because in the return I'll send them mugs with Tytus Romek i Atomek and my dad's books.
Yeah.
And my dad wrote a book about Kościuszko, so Papcio Chmiel. So they say, okay.
You know him very well. Yeah.
And so grants, like for example, Centrum Badań Kosmicznych also sent people here for a month or a couple of months. So there are ways of, once you get to JPL, you'll show them what a superstar you are, and they'll be glad to help you.
Great. And we have some startup founders who started their entrepreneurial career while doing educational academic research. Do you know about any ways how they can be involved in the tech stage over here?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Between our graduate students, we have some startup founders as well, who start building their own products while doing academic research. Do you know about any ways how they can be involved, or how they can break their foot into the American career?
Yeah, so this is where I try to help Polish startups. I like them to be a little bit more advanced. I like them to have a product, not just as we say, back of the envelope or a napkin with a drawing. And I know a couple companies here, so I like to combine companies with the companies, small companies. And a lot of times, this is the most efficient way. You have a small 30-person company here with a dynamic CEO, and now I connect them with this startup in Poland or Great Britain or whatever, and now they start talking. They figure out the paperwork, because the problem sometimes is this ITAR, traffic in arms agreements, and that's the best way, because and then they bring their product to the United States through this American-owned company, right? The English company, but it is sold as an American company, American-owned by an American citizen, so you can get a lot of contracts and you will get immediate trust, as opposed to being scrutinized that you're from abroad. So if you have a startup, you have a product, you have more than just idea, I'd like to see products, right, at some fairly advanced level of development, then get in touch.
Great. Well, this has been very helpful. Some of the insights you shared, we've never heard about this level of detail, and I'm sure there will be people who will be interested in following up with you. So I will attach contact details. Just thank you very much for this time and giving some thoughts and insights about the way how to make it over here. It's been very valuable.
I am very privileged, because if you're a Pole at Oxford, you're 10 times smarter than